Is this the part of your studio space that you're in right now?
Yeah.
Cool.
I have, we have a warehouse from the 1930s,
Okay.
and the first floor is just like workshop space, and then the top floor is where we live.
Oh, awesome. Well, that's cool that you live there.
Yeah, well, we originally had a house, and then that was like 4 blocks away, and we
Okay.
saw this building, and that was for sale. So we decided to have this to be our workspace. And then whatever, like a couple of things happened, and we sold that house and then moved into here. So originally we were just going to have this as workspace.
Okay. Very cool. So to really get started, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your jewelry business and how you got into it?
Well, it started in '98. We went like little things for friends, just like going to a hobby shop or like a bead store and just making necklaces for my mom and just like friends of ours and stuff. And then my partner and I took a trip to Puerto Rico where she was born but hadn't been back since she was 5 because she grew up in New York City.
Okay.
And while we were there, we saw lots of her family that she hadn't seen in a really long time, and we went to a lot of art shows that were like little craft shows
Yeah.
around the countryside. And while we were there was a hurricane, but we were stuck in the middle of the island for a whole week, and there was no electricity, no running water. But everyone was so generous; they just took every time they saw someone come by, they would get all their food out of the fridge, and they'd start like a huge barbecue for anybody because there's no refrigeration, so it was just you just had to eat it because it was going to go bad, and it was beautiful the day after the hurricane. So everything was going to go bad right away because it was in the 80s, 90s degrees.
Mm-hmm.
But that really impacted us. So when we moved back to the States, it was just like we really were missing something because it was such an amazing community and to just really connect with everyone who was there that we decided to move. And we just I was 21, so I just kept saying, well, I'm just going to make necklaces and sell them, and we're going to like live near the beach, and we're just going to do what we want to do. And that's actually pretty much what happened. It was a little bit idealistic, but we totally made it happen.
Yeah, that's
So
awesome.
we moved to Puerto Rico with just a suitcase, and because of the hurricane, when we got there, all the cars had been rented by FEMA and like the Red Cross, and there was only one person renting the last car available at the airport. And I just walked over to her and I was like, hey, where are you going? Can we go with you? We'll split the rental car. And then through that, we were able to find a place to live and just kind of like started our business. We just decided that was what we were going to do. So we stayed the first year on 90 acres in the middle of the rainforest, and we didn't have electricity because of the hurricane. They still didn't have electricity in that remote location.
Okay.
And we just bought like a few tools and a few beads. And I had a couple like bead catalogs. I just ordered stuff, and we just started making like hair wraps and just like little macrame bracelets out of hemp. And we went from show to show. We just went to all these little craft fairs in Puerto Rico. And every town had like a festival, like Festival of the Tomato, Festival of the Palm Leaf, Festival of like different root vegetables. Like here we have like the peach festival, strawberry festival, apple.
Right.
So they just had the same kind of thing, but with their local items,
Right.
And that just kind of took off, and we started getting into shows that we had to like apply. They had to like you had to like kind of go and show like the head of the organization what you're making, and then they would decide if you could get in. So there's no jury process, but you just kind of had to make more of a name for yourself
Okay.
instead of just going on the street and just like working your way in is what we did originally.
Mm-hmm.
And people got to know us, and we also started to follow the rules. In Puerto Rico, since the 70s, there's like a resurgence of the artisan culture where they're making a lot of, you should be making all your work from what is traditional. So you can go with there's like the three traditions, the main traditions of Puerto Rico is Spanish, like the European descent, and African, which would be, like the Spanish would be like lace and like, textiles and doll making and like little toy tops, like things you saw in the 1800s in Spain. And then African would be like masks and from coconut and from shells. And then there's the Taino, which is the indigenous group of people from Puerto Rico that still live there. And that would be like rock carving or just like different hieroglyphics, like representing what their language and their symbols were. And so we went with making things that were from there. So we used seeds, coconut palm, like little coconuts that were just like, there's so many different kinds of coconut, not just the huge ones, but the little ones too. And we started following those rules and making things out of seeds that the indigenous people would have used for jewelry.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, so by doing that, we were following the tradition and then able to get into shows and requested to be at different events.
Mm-hmm.
So that made our life a lot easier. Instead of having to push our way through or set up on the outskirts or, risk being removed from the area, we followed what they wanted us to do and were able to do that. And then we started using the wood when my grandmother just sent us like little slats of wood to just show the jewelry better, for a display. And we were like, well, we have these, and we have all these tools to start cutting and carving things. Why don't we just carve these pieces of wood? And so the first pieces were just really, really rustic. Mm-hmm. And, when that took off, we started making everything just out of wood.
Okay. That's so fascinating. So what made you leave Puerto Rico and come to Lancaster?
Well, we lived in a lot of different locations in Puerto Rico, and then we took 2 months off while we were living there, and we had like a wedding to go to in Philly, but we were like, well, why don't we just take 2 months, go to Arizona, and drive like up to Alberta, Canada, and then on the way back we can go to the wedding in Philadelphia. We just kind of we're like, well, we're going to be in the U.S., so let's just make this like giant trek around the West Coast. Yeah, so we did that, and when we got back to Puerto Rico, it just seemed, we had been there for almost 5 years at that point, and it just seemed really, really small after we had traveled so much.
Oh, okay.
And we were just kind of like, wow, we really miss we'd go into places, and we were both pretty much raised here,
Okay.
I'm mostly from New Jersey, and my partner's mostly from New York, so we're just like, let's look and see what we can do moving to the States. And one of our deciding factors was we applied to the 10 best craft shows in the U.S. in this one magazine. It's not like the best. I mean, it was very, it was still dial-up, so the internet was still like a pain in the neck to use. So I was like, okay, I still got like craft magazines. We went to Barnes & Noble and got like a slew of them. And there was just like one craft magazine. They were like, oh, the 10 best shows in the U.S. And I was like, all right, well, let's get slides made. Still slides. Digital, and the slide was like this big, and you had to write your name, your middle initial, your last name, your like what category you were in, the title of the work, size, and the number of it, and then top, and an arrow on the outside of the slide.
Yeah.
And you had to do that 5 times, and then put it in like a little those little slide holders and send it in. So luckily, we only had to do that 10 times, and we got into 3 of the shows.
Okay.
So that was like our deciding factor. If we get into shows in the U.S. and the U.S. responds to our work, because we didn't really know, because we sold to most, like 99% Puerto Ricans. The shows we did were not, barely any tourists came to.
Okay.
We did like really, and it's a huge population. There's like, I think it's like 4 million people live on the island the size of Connecticut. So it's like massive. It's mostly run by Puerto Ricans. Every once in a while you'll see a tourist in San Juan, but we didn't sell to the tourist industry mostly. So we decided, okay, we got into these 3 shows, let's just move.
Yeah. So
we were at my cousin's birthday party, and we were planning on just like living with my mom. Which, I don't know, that's not a very good plan. So we had our stuff in her garage, and we're like, oh, okay. And she was like, you can live here as long as you want. She has a really big house. There was plenty of room for a workshop.
Yeah.
And we went to my cousin's birthday party, and one of my like distant relatives was there and said she had just moved to Lancaster. And she was like, oh, she just moved to Lancaster. We should go check it out. So we stayed with her for 2 weeks, and we bought a house. We're just like, we'll just give it like a 3-year plan and see how it goes.
Yeah.
It's been fantastic. We really love it.
Cool. Lancaster, I know. I grew up in Lancaster and then moved away about 6 years ago. But we still come home a lot. And the city now there's so much more art-related things going on than when I lived there. It's a much cooler place to live than when I lived there.
Yeah. No, it's getting nicer all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. So, do you feel like your business has really changed now that you have your own storefront in place as opposed to when you were doing craft shows everywhere?
Yeah, I mean, we ran through like lots of transitions because in Puerto Rico we had at some point we did three different teams of people. I would go with assistant, and then we'd have another team that was just by themselves, and then Mai would go with like one of her assistants, and we would go to 3 shows a week.
Wow.
So we did like 40 a year. So we really like ran around a lot. And we had
Mm-hmm.
3 different cars and 3 different setups. So we really, and we were never like on the watching TV without working because we were just like totally like a factory, like just like making stuff. When we moved here, we probably did about 12 shows a year.
Mm-hmm.
Not quite as many. And then we just did wholesale shows. Like we did retail shows for a while, then we did wholesale shows, and sometimes we did like 4 shows,
Mm-hmm.
and people would purchase from. At one point, we had like 50 galleries that we were selling to 25 museum stores, and they would purchase for the whole year.
Mm-hmm.
And then we would just stay home and fill all those orders.
Yeah.
So we had that going on, and then we did just retail shows, and then we opened the gallery 3 years ago in one like a location that's close to where we are now,
Mm-hmm.
but it was 4 doors down.
Okay.
So, yeah, now we barely do any wholesale. We're only in 2 different galleries. And we do like a lot of custom orders now because the more people we see, the more people want like a custom piece.
Mm-hmm.
And that just kind of came out of just having a brick and mortar shop.
Yeah.
And then we've had a shopping cart on our website for like 8 years, I think. And then we've also done Etsy.
Okay. So, do you enjoy more kind of having a central location now as opposed to going around and doing all the craft shows, or do you sort of miss that?
Well, I just was at Rittenhouse Square, and that was awesome.
Okay.
That was, Mother's Day weekend. And then we've done a couple of really nice shows that were super, like, just great to go to.
Mm-hmm.
We did the Smithsonian Craft Show 2 years in a row.
Okay.
It's at the National Building Museum, which is just incredible. It has, like, huge fountains inside, and these huge, the faux marble columns, just, like, immense cathedral ceilings.
Yeah.
It's like 4 stories of just, and just open space.
Mm-hmm.
4 stories high, but just it's 1 floor. And it's just amazing, and the talent is just incredible. So that was a real honor to go to those shows.
Yeah.
We did the Philadelphia Museum show last year, too. That was great. Yeah.
Very cool. So in your own store, do you just sell your own jewelry, or are you also now carrying work of other artists and kind of managing that end of the business?
Well, for the first 2.5, like 2 years, we had our own space, which was just it was 144 North Prince,
Mm-hmm.
and I did my paintings, we did like collaborative sculpture, and then we showed all the jewelry we made ourselves. And then when I couldn't make enough artwork because it sold or whatever, it was going to another exhibition, we would have friends of ours we would show their artwork.
Okay.
And then in October, we moved in with Mary Ann, who has the gallery on the corner, which is 154, so it's just a few doors down
Mm-hmm.
from where we work, but it's a much nicer location. It's gorgeous, tons of light, and so she represents the art now. So she brings in artists. Some of them are from around the world. Some of them are local artists. Right now there's a local photographer. So I have a few of my paintings up, but mostly we're just selling the jewelry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. So going into a little bit more about your jewelry designs now, because obviously it's changed some from when you were living in Puerto Rico and sort of following their traditional rules. Where do you get your inspiration now for the type of jewelry design that you do?
It's mostly like architecture,
Mm-hmm.
like building design and chairs and like furniture. Right now we have like this big pink bicycle, for like a fluorescent pink bike in front of the place. And that's from It's Modern Art,
Mm-hmm.
like the Be Modern, and a bunch of people that work with her, they painted it, and they had art bikes for Art Walk weekend.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, it was great. And all you had to go is just like, you could just go into their gallery and give them your ID, and you could just take the bike out for the day. And so I took one bike for that day, and I just never gave it back. Like I just was like, can this just stay in front of my gallery? It's like really fun to have it there, and there's just like, every once in a while there'll be like nursery school kids walk by and they'll just be all like screaming how awesome the bike is, and
Yeah.
Just
That's cool.
they're so into the pink. So the pink is like really in color right now, and just all the fluorescence. So I've started to make things fluorescent, like not exactly based on the bike, but just that it's such a popular color right now. Even though it's kind of painful because it's like so 80s.
Oh, it's okay.
I see people walking down the street now who are in their in their teens and they're wearing stuff I've owned. I'm like, I've worn that. I can't believe that they're wearing what I've worn before.
Yes, the 80s they're coming back to us. Do you do a lot of pre-planning for your jewelry, like sketching, or are you kind of just more process oriented when you do it?
Yeah, usually things are made out of scraps from other things.
Okay.
Well, to begin with, everything we make is based from, like, we buy silver that's refined and not mined, so that's from a refinery, so that's recycled material. All the wood is from, like, scrap yards and pieces people give us when they're moving and they just start cleaning out their warehouse. I just got some awesome pieces from Evan, and I made those into belt buckles for Father's Day.
Okay.
So we're always, like, reusing, and yeah, I made some cufflinks, too. We're always reusing scraps from other people, so they could be like a whole door or like beams. Like we were always in people's dumpsters when they were redoing these old houses and stuff. We got a lot of beams that we turned to giant lettering.
Okay.
And that was all old pine. And then when we've done a lot of things. Like when we took apart our mattress, we made like a beam trellis. Like we're always just kind of like whatever, just like we like reworking old things. And we use aluminum, and all the aluminum is recycled.
Okay.
As well. It's from scrapyards, or if we see someone who threw out a folding chair, we'll take that and chop it up into bits and make that into jewelry. And that process is now called green, but when we first did it, it was just called like getting stuff really cheap.
It's just called I don't have any money.
So I'm really happy there's like a green movement, but we did not actually think of ourselves as a green or eco-friendly company,
right,
or studio to begin with. I mean, maybe when we had the seeds and stuff, but not when we started using like aluminum and stuff. It was just like people would give us stuff, and we'd be like, "Oh, we can do something with this."
Yeah.
So every once in a while, I have to buy like leather cord. I buy a few things, but most of the time, I try to reuse it. So then when I'm making something, I have everything out like a mad person. It's not at all OCD, just like all over the place, sprawling mess. And then that really is an inspiration for something else. Like when like two pieces are laying next to each other that are left over from a design that's already been made, I'll be like, well, what can I do with these two? And I think it comes from just like reusing and having scraps to begin with. Just that whole mentality of like, I don't want these to go to waste because these could be something else too. And just like looking and finding pieces that will fit together and making a really cool design. Of course, a lot of times it's a lot easier now that we have a gallery because we get instant feedback as soon as people come in. But when we were doing wholesale for a while, and only wholesale, so people would only see us at wholesale shows every few months, we didn't have that instant feedback, and we hit up a lot of doozies, like designs we thought were awesome, and even that we wore and showed our friends, and a lot of times we give those first designs to people as gifts, housewarming gifts, and and they were just totally in love with them, and we'd go out wearing those designs, totally in love with them, and never sold any of them. We'd take them to the show, or just be like, oh, we have this whole new, brand new spring line. Should have wound up at Marshall's. Like the jeans with the butterfly on the butt. You turn around and you're like, these are great jeans, and you're like, oh yeah, never mind. So we've done that.
Yeah. Everybody does that, I think.
Yeah.
So how did you actually learn about creating jewelry and sculpture and really get into art making? Did you go to school for art, or was it more just kind of something you loved and learned as you went along the way?
No, it's just something. Yeah, I just made a couple of necklaces for people, and then just decided to buy a battery-powered screwdriver first, which also it could be a drill, and it had to be with a battery because we didn't have electricity at that time. So we just started buying little tools here and there, and we'd charge them at other people's houses and bring them to our house. Yeah, it was just little by little, and lots of breaking things, and lots of trial and error.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's the best way. I mean, I have an art background, but I only ever took one weaving class, and that's what I ended up doing all the time. And most of it is just, well, I screwed that up, so how can I fix that?
Right.
Which is really how I like to learn. I don't like to be taught a lot, which perhaps is ironic that I'm a teacher, but
Yeah, but you have that different perspective of how learning is.
yeah, I do always, when I'm giving the students directions, I kind of laugh because I'm like, well, you should follow these, but I don't actually ever follow directions, so
Really.
we'll see what happens. So as far as marketing your work, because obviously you've been in a lot of different places and gotten into a lot of shows and done fairly well, what are maybe the top 3 things that you would say you've successfully done to market your work?
Well, there's like, I guess I'll just talk about like right now, because it's always been really different. And also with technology, because we started really before internet.
Right. When we all heard that crazy noise when you had to get on the internet, like,
Oh my god, dial-up. I know. And, well, right now, I think the best thing we do is we go to a lot of events, and we're part of the community. And we do a lot of community work. Like right now, I'm working on part of the steering. What is it? The actual title is like, I don't know what the actual title is, but it's like the steering committee to pick the public art for the 2 parks that are right behind our house.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a community event, and I think just being associated with more art brings in, it's just kind of the energetics of it. The more I'm involved with art projects in the city, the more people are part of my life that like art. So that brings in business eventually, because it's just, just us giving out to the world, and then people bringing, getting really interested in being part of what we're doing and we're making, and part of our design. So I think that was the most important thing, is to really be around people, be part of the community, give a lot to the community. We've done like a lot of different fundraisers over the years for Art Street, for the Red Cross, for Clare House, for Lancaster Pride. So I think people really respond to that, especially in this community. And then, like Fig has a party, and Susquehanna Style has a party, just to like, and we're in those magazines from time to time as well. And just going, and getting to know your neighbors, getting to know people that you hang out with, other business owners. I think that's one of the major successes in a small town, to have a business, just to be out there.
Cool. Very cool. So what advice would you give to someone that is just getting started? So maybe someone that's leaving high school or leaving college and thinking that it would be fun to make a living making art. What would you advise them to do?
To totally do it. Like, just like live your life. Like, do it, just go all for it and totally commit to it, and be like relentlessly optimistic. Just make it work 100% of the time. Just, and that means, that things don't actually have to work, but your process is happening. Like, step by step, you're just stepping in, you're going forward. You may not be stepping forward, but you're just, like, moving somehow. Like, every day, you're just, like, working towards what you want to be doing. Because I think that's the most important thing. We wouldn't be doing this if we didn't really love doing it.
Right.
And, yeah, we're unstoppable. It's like, we just have, like, this drive that even if, we had to sell our, whatever, it's like, it doesn't matter. Like, we've made a lot of decisions that our art will come first, no matter what, because that's the most important thing for us.
Yeah.
So I think that's the decision you have to make. Like, okay, well, I guess I can't go on that trip, or I can't, or I need to take this job to pay for my supplies so I can be an artist. Just making all of those types of sacrifices to then not have the sacrifice because you're making art. I don't know.
Right. No, I think that's great, and it definitely reflects, I feel like, your story and you just kind of going out there and doing your thing and continuing to believe it's going to work.
Yeah, we're just like jumping off the cliff constantly. We're like, let's just do this. Okay.
Yeah, I think you kind of have to do that sometimes. There's only so much you can plan and predict, and then you kind of have to just go for it and see where you land.
Yeah, I mean, it's been great, and it's just been more and more enjoyable as I felt like I don't have to push as hard, too. The more I can just relax and let things happen, because we have such a blessed life, and everything has been so easy for us. Just if we just look at it, it's like, really, this has really happened, and we were able to do all of this.
Yeah.
And we were able to have this community that supports us, so that's all we have to do, is just make art, enjoy it, And so I think now at this point I'm actually able to reflect on that and be like, wow, it has been enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to work like so insanely hard or like worry work. Like
Right.
work constantly. What's going to happen? What's going to happen? If I can just be like, oh, I'm just going to make stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and whatever's going to happen is going to work out for the best. Like just really having like a lot more faith in what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I think that's what the 16 years has brought me. Like a lot more faith.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot more like relaxation that things are going to work out, just that understanding.
Yeah.
So that's why people should just go for it, because it's just going to work out. And it's all perspective anyway.
Right. Right.
I mean, it's like, nothing else has to happen. Like everything we've done has been great.
Mm-hmm.
From the really weird stuff, the cars breaking down, the flat tires, like it's fine. That's not really a big deal.
Right.
Except you're wearing a dress, but but besides that, it's just like not.
Way to put it into perspective.
Yeah, it's not really a big deal.
I didn't. I'm kind of going away from outdoor shows, just because one there's a lot more risk involved, and so often when it's 90 degrees, no one wants to try a scarf on.
Yeah.
I did do some outdoor shows and would do okay, but so often people were like, oh, I love it, but, I can't even think about a scarf right now. I don't want to put one on. So I was kind of like, just listen to your customers and focus on indoor shows.
Yeah. No, outdoor shows are difficult.
Yeah.
We're doing Long's Park, too.
Okay.
But Long's Park, like, I went into it last year with the same kind of idea, like, this could just be an information booth for my gallery.
Right. Oh, yeah, definitely. I always try to. I was doing a show last year that the first day I sold absolutely nothing and was just like, okay, well, there's a real potential that this is not going to go so well. So then I look around the people around me, I'm like, okay, who can I learn from? Who's doing something that I find interesting? Somehow this is going to be a successful weekend in some way, shape, or form. I ended up doing really well the next day then, but I do try whatever's going on in the show and finding some way to be like, something good will come out of this.
Yeah.
And then it normally does. I think if you go in with that attitude as opposed to, even if I'm not making tons of money, then I'm going to make some new friends or learn something new because there's a lot of smart people around you when you're at shows.
Or play with your phone.
Play some games, do something.
Like, oh man, Yeah, why not, right? Yeah, we've had, whole weeks of shows where we didn't sell anything. Like a show that's a week long.
Yeah.
Things that your bins at the bottom of the booth to like start floating away because there's so much water in the parking lot, or it's just part of the course.
Right. There's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, but the gallery is that's pretty nice, because I was just saying this morning that it's so cushy. I have the air conditioning on. I'm just like, whoa.
Right.
There's no need for a ice chest full of, a cooler full of water or whatever. There's like a fridge in the back. And
yeah.
It's something really different about being in an outdoor show. Even Rittenhouse Square, which was pretty, very pampered, really nice setting. The last day, like almost everyone's tent almost blew away. It was like 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts. And
yeah, it always seems to be so windy there, and that's a little stressful when your tent like starts to levitate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Hey, it's part of the